7 o'clock, let's go ahead and start it. Got a couple of housekeeping things first. Sure. 7 o'clock. It is the February 12th. Just checking to make sure the camera folk or camera aim. February 12th, Monday. Jamaica Town Office meeting room for the Jamaica Select Board. The agenda's been passed out. The very first thing to do is call for any late additions to the agenda. I know of 2.
I know one other one.
You have one?
One other one, yeah. Just on the transportation meeting that I went to today in the region.
I've got you down as,
That was the full committee also. 2 separate things.
okay.
And you have the library.
I have the library, and we have, we're going to have, at the end of the evening, we're going to have an executive session
Oh, okay.
for a personnel matter that just came up today.
Okay.
Okay? Alexa, anything for you?
No, sir.
Good, thank you. So, first order of business, the usual, second actually, approve the minutes for the January 22nd Select Board meeting. These were all sent to you all electronically. Did anybody not get them?
I don't think I did.
Really?
Yeah, but,
Do you want to copy real quick?
I read them over while we were.
Oh, did you? Okay,
so
good.
I'm okay.
I'm sorry, but I left out one thing about the Southern Vermont Housing Summit, just a brief report about that.
Is that on here?
No, that's another one that I want to hit.
Okay, we're going to have a very busy schedule. Let's see if we can get to that.
It'll be very quick.
All right, the minutes. Any corrections, deletions, questions? Hearing none, I take a
I'll move.
move
Just a minute.
and a second, and a move and a second to accept the minutes as presented from the January 22nd Select Board meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those are now accepted. The usual item number 3, timesheets, town office, solicitors, highway, transfer station will be done at the end of the evening. And the same with number 4, sign the select board orders. Now, we have this evening, we've been discussing for some time now the feasibility, the possibility of water program for the town and a feasibility study that we approved to go forward. Some things that have come up since that require us taking a look at some stuff. And one of them is from the state. And so tonight we have Tom Brown and Lynette, yes? Clausen? Oh, okay, I'll take your word for it. Clouden? Okay. From the state of Vermont. What's your official office?
We're the Facilities Engineering Division
Okay.
in the Water Infrastructure Finance Program.
Okay, good. And they're going to speak.
Lynette is a wastewater and stormwater engineer.
Oh. Well, we're going to hear a little bit tonight because there appears on the horizon some funding for feasibility studies. And we'd like to explore that possibility. So they're going to give us a short briefing tonight on that topic. And it's your floor, sir.
Okay.
Or her floor. You guys can fight over it.
We're gonna switch.
Okay.
So I work with the Planning Advance program. When a community comes along who might be able to take advantage of it, it's a very small program, and it's designed for communities that don't have water or sewer infrastructure currently. It's a loan, like most of our programs are a loan, but it's a loan with an indefinite repayment period because the loan repayment doesn't start unless you build the recommendation of the project. So it's sort of like a grant if you don't ever build anything. But in the event that you do build something, they would ask you to repay it at that time.
What would be the percentage for the loan?
So for the repayment, the interest,
Mhm.
so all of our loans in Clean Water SRF are 0% through planning and design, but then once you get into construction, everything rolls over into the construction loan. So towns typically in this process, they might start with a planning advance loan, do a feasibility study, then come back to us for a planning loan, and then the design loan, and then the construction loan. And we're hoping that with the planning advance, that you might get about halfway through the planning.
No, is that still 0% or is that?
Yeah, what percent
It's 0%.
Even the construction too?
in the construction?
So the construction is at 2%, but it's an admin fee. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I can chime in, sure. I'm the Clean Water SRF.
Yeah.
And actually, I've got some handouts too to leave with you guys regarding our programs. And I understand you guys had Ashley call in from the drinking water SRF side, and I'm her counterpart on the clean water. And another option, which Chris and I had talked about, and Paul we talked about as well, was the planning loans that we offer in the Clean Water SRF. It's an alternative to a planning advance, where a planning advance, if you never go forward, you don't ever have to pay it back. I think the general idea is you're going to go forward at some point. And when is another question. If it's going to be more than 5 years out that you might move forward, then the planning advance probably makes a lot of sense. The clean water loan for a feasibility study would be 0% interest, 0% admin fee, and there would be no payments for 5 years. And in 5 years, if it's not rolled into another planning loan or a design loan, then we would ask for you to go into repayment. And that would be 5 years of 5 equal payments, basically. And right now, what we are offering is 50% subsidy on your planning loan. So if you come to us for $10,000 to do a feasibility study in Clean Water SRF, we'll forgive 50% of that.
You said clean water?
SRF, State Revolving Fund, State Revolving Loan Fund.
That's the green sheet. That's where it's coming out.
The second page on each of those, or on the back page on all those, is the same. It's a summary of all of our water infrastructure financing programs. And on the front is specific ones. Ashley talked to you guys about maybe doing a water planning loan, which is an alternative as well to the planning advance. It sounded like the town mean household income was too high to get subsidy on the drinking water loan, unless you did an income survey. And
I have a question about
Yes.
that. There was talk about doing this in a fire district instead of for the whole town.
that's a possibility.
And if it became a fire district, the mean income most likely would be lower.
Okay. That's something to look at. It's probably a good thing to, that might make a lot of sense. Is part of the scope of the feasibility study is to think about how that's going to go forward. On the Clean Water SRF, we're not affordability criteria driven until the construction loan. So no matter what town you are, if we still have subsidy left in our purse, we give it out to anybody who steps up and wants to do planning. On the drinking water side, they have more projects than money, and on clean water, we have more money than projects. And
You
so-
guys don't talk to each other.
Yeah, I tell her to keep her hands out of my money. No, you can't have any. So the way that would work, and I think it makes a lot of sense for you guys. If you really think that you're going to do something in the next 5 years, whether it be you're going to take this feasibility study and move to a preliminary engineering report or into design work or something like that, and then you probably want to look at us for your planning money. If you're on the drinking water side, and we don't want to speak too much for Ashley's program because she's the boss on her side. the big thing that you need to know for the Clean Water SRF, if you want to get involved in our program, is we can only lend to people who have completed the RFQ process when they selected their engineer. And that means they have selected an engineer based on their qualifications, not their costs. So there's a public process that you would go through where you would advertise. We could help you put together an advertisement where you would go out and seek engineers to respond to your RFQ and then they will come to you and tell you why you should hire them. Yes?
Does it matter that we have done that procedure already? We've selected an engineering firm to do that.
If you have already selected your engineering firm and gone into an agreement, then we wouldn't be able to give you subsidy.
Now, there's a fuzzy line. This would be good for,
They did competitively procure.
Oh, they did? Okay.
say that again.
All right.
You competitively procured.
Oh, yeah, we did that.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The
For
glitch
water
there,
or for sewer?
for the feasibility.
For the water feasibility study.
Oh, for water feasibility. Okay. Is the clean water part of the engineering service agreement?
At this point, the scope of the study so far has been to look at the existing conditions, looking at both septic and water conditions. It's not for a full PER, it's for a very small study to look at existing conditions, determine need.
Okay. I guess I would have to look at the advertisement that you guys put out. And would have to look at the details of that to see if it would fit into the federal requirement, because this is the RFQ, they also call it QBS, Qualifications Based Selection, is a federal requirement for the SRFs. And the drinking water doesn't have that requirement, but the clean water does. And I don't know why
But
that
the
is.
planning advance program doesn't, because the planning advance program is just state money.
That's right.
So you're saying the planning piece of this is state money?
So the planning advance program that I represent is sort of joined with the Clean Water SRF. It's all the same staff, and so it's a little confusing. But the money comes from a different place. So this is an appropriation from the Vermont Legislature that's available to Vermont municipalities to do this work.
Well, then let me ask you a question, because this is one of the things that you and I haven't talked yet about, but the contract that they sent us to review and ultimately to sign in theory does not include the federal requirements piece that we all know is attached to federal money.
For the subsidy.
For any of it. You know, the issue is that the contract that Dufresne sent us to review
Yep.
would not meet your necessary, the Minority Employment Act and all those kind of things that
Oh.
federal contracts require.
Okay.
So that contract would have to be redone to meet their needs. Does that make sense?
If you're gonna go through either DWSRF or CWSRF, we would have to give you a different contract. Yes.
So that's kind of one of the questions that have been kind of swirling around this since we found out about you guys.
Okay, so you haven't executed the agreement, or you?
We haven't signed the contract.
That's
Okay, all right. So there's, you could do the RFQ. As this is just feasibility, and you guys are already, have you started doing any kind of work on it
No.
already? I mean, the planning advance is certainly an option where you could do the feasibility with the planning advance, and then come in for the preliminary engineering into the SRF, and then that subsidy would be there. And we're planning on next year having planning money available again for our intended use plan, which is how we spend our federal fund.
So that if I understand it, the funding available for the feasibility study is separate and distinct from the planning required to go forward. So that the feasibility study money could be applied to this contract now.
So
But we do another RFQ.
the planning advance for clean water. So that means they have to investigate the sewer aspects that your town has problems with.
Say that one more time, please.
So the money that's available is what's called pollution control planning advance. So it's really septic related. So they have to investigate the status of your septics. It sounds like they're maybe proposing to do something like that already. So there may be some way that we can look at paying for a portion of that work under the planning advance program. But we'd have to look at sewer solutions too.
So we're actually not getting into the solution part of it as part of this study.
My sense is that the feasibility study that we have selected is whether to determine whether we are a go or a no-go on solving the water problem. Am I correct about that?
I think that, if I should let you speak to that, but there's some fuzziness around it, because I think your explanation is that you're really looking to see what the problem is, to define the problem, define its location, and to define its scope, and then offer potential solutions to that. Not to the engineering side of it, but just to say, okay, you guys have a problem, if you don't have a problem, but with some professional oomph behind it.
And that's where the decision we would still make it, whether
If we're
we
going
want to
to
go
vote.
into that kind of debt to go ahead with the water.
Yeah,
So that's, now I
that's
don't know
fine.
where
Yes.
that fits in with the planning. The word planning has to me a much more active, it's much more active noun than feasibility.
Sure, I understand what you
Planning
mean.
means, okay, we're gonna go, but we better find out all of this stuff ahead of time.
Sure, and actually, planning, when we talk planning, we're actually, that covers design and everything. It's planning and construction. That's how the federal government looks at it. But when I talk, I always talk step 1, step 2, step 3. Planning, design, construction. And that way, everybody's, that's how we all talk at the state that way. When you get your loan numbers, there's a .1, .2, .3 to tell you what kind of loan you're looking at. And so I can understand how that could be confusing. We use planning interchangeably. But feasibility, that's a planning loan. Asset management, we'd call that. We refer to it as a planning loan too. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. And I think that you guys are probably, from the emails and conversations I've had, you're really trying to figure out, is this something we can do as a community versus we're gonna do something.
Right.
And we're gonna commit to actually preliminary engineering versus.
We haven't decided to commit
Yeah,
to
we have
that.
not decided.
You're really definitely on the feasibility then.
Yeah.
That's really where
This
you need
is
to
what
be.
we're having you do.
Yeah.
So then you just said the feasibility would be under the planning. Is this level of feasibility study included in your planning at this stage, even though we haven't decided to go forward?
Absolutely, yep, 50%. It's a planning loan.
Now, two different things that I've heard, that you said that this money, wherever it comes from, has to include septic.
Yes, so if you do the planning advance money that's currently available, which is separate from the planning loan from the Clean Water SRF, so like, the Clean Water SRF is the top line, and planning advance is the second to bottom line in the back of the handout.
And whether or not we qualify for money under your principles, we do qualify for money under yours, or is that?
Yeah, usually we have several communities that are doing this kind of work, and a lot of times what they'll do is they'll come in to the SRF and say, hey, how about we want to look at both of these, and Ashley and I will split the planning loan right down the middle, 50-50. And
And
if, go ahead.
Just to be clear, the town qualifies for the program. The study may or may not fully qualify for the program,
Your program,
the planning advance program.
but not your program.
That's right.
So we cannot qualify for your program and qualify for your program.
And, yeah, the scope for the planning advance is very narrow. It's a pollution control.
Right.
So even with the clean water planning loan, it would still need to be directed at septic.
It's-
Whereas
Which is not what we're doing.
the drinking water planning loan is for drinking water.
And that's not your purview.
No, that's actually,
That's actually, it's not even you. It's
No, no.
Okay.
We sit right next to each other and we talk
I hope
through
you talk.
projects. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, when Ashley and I talk, we're always looking, and Lynette and Robert Pelosi is our other design engineer. We're always looking to figure out what's the best deal for the towns. And a lot of times we're talking to USDA when it comes time for construction. It's not all about us using our money, it's about what the options are for the towns as they're moving forward.
Okay,
So we co-fund a lot, we do a lot of different
So we
creative
have
things.
right now a contract in our hands, which may or may not have to be modified.
Mhm.
But we have a commitment from the town to spend X amount of dollars
For the feasibility.
for the feasibility.
Mhm.
So if we hold off signing that contract and speak to you, you will recommend to us what's available to us.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, I can do a follow-up with you guys, so you have a little report back from me on what it would look like if you came to the Clean Water SRF for that portion of your feasibility study. I'd be happy to do that. The thing that would be difficult is we have to look at the RFQ that was done and make sure that that will fall into our requirement. If it doesn't, we may ask you to do something different.
Like send out a whole brand new RFQ?
Yeah,
Okay.
that could be, or an additional piece to it. Haven't had that happen yet. Hopefully it doesn't. I'd like to be able to
So it would be hard to have the people that we had who we rejected come back and do a study knowing they weren't going to be accepted.
Right,
So,
yeah. That's true,
okay.
unless you expanded the scope of it.
Mm.
A lot of times, an RFQ will get done, it'll be for feasibility, planning, design, construction. They'll pick one engineer because they want to stay with them and not have to keep going back and RFQing at every step along the way. Because then you're stuck where you could be changing engineers. So it's really important to do your homework up front and get that RFQ done and do it once for the whole shooting match. That's my opinion.
So Chrissy, where do we stand with this?
Well, it's my understanding that the RFQ process is pretty liberal from past projects that we've done.
It can be. The RFQ language has to be specific to every aspect of the project going forward. So you can't just say, oh, just wastewater. It's got to be wastewater design within construction, construction project management, and breaks out a lot of the details.
I mean, for what they've already done, if they're just gonna focus, because at this point, they don't know if the community's gonna wanna move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So if they just wanted to focus on this small piece, it seems like the requirements for the RFQ are pretty liberal, so what they did,
Probably meets it.
yeah.
Okay, that'd be fine we can take a look at that. Maybe that's another approach is to, if this works, look at what comes out of the feasibility, and then the next step would be, okay, we're gonna RFQ for the rest of it.
Well, in fact, our next step will probably be taking it back to the citizens about here's what we now know.
Right.
Okay.
I think to help you understand where we are with this, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And so we're asking Chrissy and crew to tell us what we don't know about the question.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And at the end of which, we should know more about what we don't know, and hopefully we'll know something by then. You are following this, right? Please. The point is, the question we're asking is, do we have a problem? And what are the chances of us actually fixing it in our lifetime? Roughly.
Sure.
And then we will go take it to the citizenry and find out here's what we have. Now, do we go forward with an RFQ which means all the usual rigmarole of that, with the intent of fixing what she tells us we can fix. Does that make sense to you, Kristen?
Yes.
We're gonna read back what I just said.
That's gonna cost you a lot.
Chris Campbell has
I'll
a,
get back to you.
Is it okay if I ask a question, or is that?
Oh, no, come on in, you're part of this.
So the question I would have, I guess, so,
Wait, for the camera?
oh, Chris Campbell, Winter Regional.
Thank you.
So if the town wanted to ask a more robust series of questions, like beyond drinking water, just like, what is the full spectrum of the problem, both drinking water wise and water quality wise and impact on, stormwater and impact on human health, impact on ecosystem health, impact on economic development, impact on grant, whatever, the whole. So if you wanted to do the full buffet option, and so that more, I guess, robust, broader scope study was done, if the solutions proposed could certainly be phased, right? To where it'd be like, yeah, we really can't move forward with wastewater, but it would be prudent perhaps to move forward with water, or the answer could be, we're not gonna move forward with anything, because we need to see what their outcome of the study is. I mean, is that a possible, is that something that this would?
So one possibility would be to actually do both, to take the pollution control plan advance and do the water feasibility study together, and to really look at your full breadth of your problem and the full spectrum of potential possible solutions. Because I don't know your town, it's pretty obvious that it's got a dense village, and there's a lot of incentive in Vermont to try and keep our villages and to keep them robust. And septic is definitely hard for people in your situation with,
And we do have a problem with our septics,
yeah.
so.
So if you don't ever build a sewer solution, you don't have to pay back the planning advance money. But it might be worthwhile to explore that option.
Because what I'm wondering is if you could leverage, your citizens voted, I think it was $7,000, and so I don't know what the scope of that vote was, but you've been authorized to spend up to that level to look at that question. So I don't know what these studies would typically cost, but what I'm hearing them say is you may be able to, and I'm not advocating, I'm just your all's call, but what I'm hearing, what I'm trying to make sense of too, because we're working on a number of terms on this question, is leveraging what you've already approved on the drinking water side with also looking at the water quality side to kind of flesh out the fuller picture of what your issues are. Kind of what you were saying, better at explaining what you don't know, but on a maybe broader array of questions. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, absolutely.
Chrissy, has that dovetail with what you guys have already set up to do?
If you take the 7,000 on the water study side and then combine it with something from Lynette's planning advance program to get more into the wastewater side, that'll give you, it'll let you get more done on this initial, study and give you more information to take back to the community. So
And
that can
goes
certainly be,
simultaneously?
yes, yes.
Well, you're doing something about the wastewater, are you not? Are you looking at something?
We were gonna look at it, look at basically collecting information on the condition of septic systems in regard to how it affects the water. So that can certainly be spread into looking at, water, wastewater solutions moving forward,
Sure.
instead of just water.
One of the things that I guess she and I talked about, you may not be aware of, is that there's a portion of the community that's not convinced there is a sewage problem. There's a number of people who have been sharing septics over the last, X number of generations, and they're happy with what they have, and are reluctant to spend lots and lots of money to do something else. So part of the question is, do we have a septic problem? Not just we have one, how do we fix it? But first, do we have it? So we're really just getting a good look at this. Pardon us. Training. Sorry about that. She's rescue, I'm fire. We have to decide who goes. Since we got these new ones with these vibrators, when they go off, they go off. Yeah. Sorry about that. Anyway, where's,
There's
where's that?
also another issue, and that is that it would be just for the village. And we have many people who live in the outlying areas, and whether or not they would even vote to go for a program that would really just include the village is a major pitfall that we might have.
Well, there's lots of little things that are down the road quite a
Yeah,
ways, and
right.
if we just get a good idea about what we really have for a problem, then we can at least, inform the discussion with facts, as opposed to
Right.
speculation.
Well, Chris was saying about, talking about the economic vibrancy as part of the scope. That might be a point that might be helpful when you're talking to the rest of your town.
Right.
And that's
Say,
on the
this is
table.
how, this is the impact it will have for you as a resident, even though you're not a user.
Right.
And then there'd also be some discussion about who's paying for the upkeep, like the regular O&M of a new system should it be built. And then it would be, imagine the people in the outlying areas would be inclined to think that, well, the users need to pay. We can help get it set up, but then the people that are on it need to pay to keep it rolling. But that's a local decision as well.
Right.
And to your point about people being content with the systems they have, what I find, just where I sit at the Winter Regional Commission, but also as I'm chair of village trustees for Newfane Village, myself and 3 other people, we have 1906 bylaws. We do a good job keeping the oxen off the village green, but anyway, and preventing stickball in the rights of way. But what I find is people are content with it until the property goes up for sale. And sometimes it's not the owner who has to deal with that, it's the heirs. And then you do the engineering inspection during the home inspection, and then you find out the pipes lead to nowhere or what have you. And then the person trying to buy or the person trying to figure out who sells figures out where the tens of thousands of dollars are going to come from to put in the system to bring it up to code on a lot that's substandard and it shadows the drinking well. And those to me are the kinds of just objective questions this study would ultimately answer. It's not the things are fine as long as they are. It's from a planning perspective, what does it mean for the durability, the resiliency of the village? Because I know that we've seen cases where, like as businesses go up for sale, they do the engineering study, they find an issue with the well, they find an issue with the septic, the deal falls through, and then eventually the property goes up for tax sale because the property values here meaning Southern Vermont, just aren't increasing in a way that justifies that additional tens of thousands of dollars on top of the other property to sell whatever it's going to be there is to be sold. And the other issue that we're finding too, as far as like aging in place, especially as we have an aging population, they tend to want to live in a place where you can walk to the post office, walk to a market, walk to a bank. And then, so adding like accessory dwelling units or apartments or dividing up homes into apartments, you're just precluded from that because the existing septics, you can't add any additional units to that small lot, that small septic system. And so your villages are just kind of frozen in time. And that to me is the kind of question that you can begin to get at with a really robust study. But that's, it's easy for me to say as somebody who doesn't live here, that's because sometimes people are just nervous about asking the questions. But I don't think, like, if you answer the questions, it's not like A&R is going to parachute in.
Oh, yeah,
And
hold you to it.
say, well, it's not like you're going to parachute in and say,
Right.
you've got a problem. It's just more of from a planning perspective,
That's right.
what are the issues and can they be addressed, should they be addressed, is it in the town's interest to do that? That's your all's call.
And you make very good points, and with the information we get from reframing people, we should be able to present that question in a little bit more, let's just say, illuminated perspective.
And less anecdotal, 'cause that's the thing, is you know, it's always the rumors, right? It's the telephone game. It starts out with a failed septic system that maybe cost $2,000 to fill. Next thing you know, it was $1 million to, put in. So I don't know, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but that's always the issue with these, is you always hear the rumors of why something fell through, but with the work that you guys or whoever could do, you could actually tell the real objective story about, well, this is, as you do interviews with business owners and all, it's like, well, yeah, I really was limited by the health regulations. I couldn't put a table in the deli. This property sale really did fall through because you couldn't do a commercial quality well, or whatever the issues are. So that way you get past the anecdotal evidence
And that's sort of the direction we're going right now. I guess the question is whether or not that particular question is fundable through you guys. And you're nodding yes.
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay.
And I'm nodding.
And you're nodding yes.
And
So then, our next step for us is what?
you need to make a decision on whether, on how you want to move forward from a larger standpoint. So if you want to keep the clean water SRF as an option, then you need to evaluate the RFQ that's been done, make sure that it meets our requirements. If it doesn't, you'd have to do it in a way that it did meet our requirements, which
One that's present,
yeah.
or
So you
for
just
a
raise-
whole new batch of RFQs.
Well, you can choose different ways too. You
Okay.
can just do the feasibility and just stick to that, because that might, if you tried to RFQ for the whole thing, and
We
that
don't-
got
we don't
out
have-
on the street,
We don't have the mandate for that. We have only the mandate for the feasibility study.
You can
okay.
also co-fund the drinking water feasibility with the planning advance.
Say that one more time.
You can co-fund, the-
Yeah.
so we would pay for the septic part,
So they're both going
but they're,
parallel.
Chrissy, but
So
just,
if you wanted to do both options and kind of maximize the amount of data and information you can get for the amount of money you're gonna put out, you can use Lynette's program to do the wastewater side of things. And that doesn't require you to go back through any RFQ process. She's fine with what you've done so far. And then either locally fund the water side or go through Ashley on the drinking water state revolving fund. And those two programs can either local funding with the planning advance program through Lynette, or drinking water and the planning advance program can be combined to do, the two different, the water and the wastewater together.
So as you sit right now with the contract you devised, you're scheduled to kind of take a look at both of those. Is that correct?
We're gonna look at the existing conditions for both, but we're really gonna be focusing on drinking
Drinking
water.
water first for recommendations, but
Yes.
you're going to be looking at the existing conditions.
Yes.
Would the scope of that change if she was funding the wastewater?
We could expand the scope of that.
Okay.
If you wanted to take the 7,000 that you've already got approval for, and you wanted to increase the budget to add more scope through Lynette's program, you could do that, or you could just stick with the $7,000. And I think if we have that wastewater focus in there, then Lynette can still do half of it, probably,
Yeah.
50-50.
My thinking, and I share this with the board real quick, my thinking that if we make any major changes to the scope of the original RFQ, we run the risk of unmaking people unhappy who were bidding originally. So I think I would like to stick with what we have, I'm putting this on the table for us all, stick with what we have and perhaps adding your component to it without having to rewrite the RFQ or without having to go back to the bidding process. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Does that work for you guys?
One
Lex, your
question
thoughts?
for Lynette. Would that require a step one agreement? No? Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Whatever that is.
So then if we did it this way, that you're proposing, then we can go to you folks for the next step?
right.
Okay,
I
so-
would still want to review the draft
Yeah, of
agreement,
course.
but
So if I get you guys copies of the current RFQ,
Yes.
okay, I'll get I got your email, I think, because you
Yes.
sent me stuff. Send, do you need copies of the contract as it's written now?
Yeah, the draft would be great, because then that's gonna look at it, where we're all right in the same office. You know, I can let you know if the RFQ would qualify, but it sounds more like you guys wanna do this planning advance, which is a great idea too.
Well, we're sort of restrained by what we get the mandate to do.
Sure.
There's a lot
absolutely.
of, a lot of upset throughout the community, and so we're kind of doing this one piece at a time, and we want to make sure that we're following what our mandate from the community is, and that is to find out what, if any, the problem is.
Mhm.
So if we go ahead, what I'll do is I will send, pause, parenthesis, Chrissy. If I send this to them, have them look it over, right away I know he's going to say that we need to put in the federal components, correct?
If you-
No.
You're looking
Not
for
for-
a fund, you're the state.
Well,
Yeah, no, the planning advance is all state money,
so there's no, we don't have to
so
change
you
it
don't
all.
have to meet
So you're
federal
not
prosecutors.
bound.
Okay,
That's right, not yet.
okay, so at this stage, then we can send the existing contract to you, you can look that over and decide whether or not it meets the needs, okay? And I will send a copy of the RFQ, and you guys have shared that, so I'll just send it to you, you can
So we can talk
spread
about
it
it.
around.
Mhm.
And Paul, too, I think also I heard them say too, that once they look at that, once they see the scope, they'll advise how to get the most for your money.
Okay,
So I think you can trust them to say, this is how to get the biggest
Okay.
value for Jamaica's vote and tax dollar and everything else.
so, yeah, good point.
And we might have to add some language more directed towards wastewater, towards water and wastewater. I'm not sure how I don't remember exactly how it was worded.
So, well, you and I can talk about the pieces of that, because there's a couple little things that we should talk about anyway, and we'll
Yeah.
put together.
Did you guys have any discussions with the ACCD?
Who is the
They
ACC?
are the Community Development Division or Agency.
So Department of Housing and Community Development of the Agency of Commerce and Community
There we
Development.
go, that's it.
So
You
you
get a
guys got
municipal
the
planning grant to look at this too.
Municipal planning grant from? The,
That we got the planning grant
yes.
from before?
Yes.
That we've exhausted the amount of money we can sneak from those grants?
No,
We got a planning grant for the planning.
Chris
grant.
says, no, grab it.
no, this is a priority. The village water and wastewater is a priority issue for them.
How would we go, how would we go with basically the planning committee would do?
We're having a they're revisiting, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, Agency of Natural Resources at the tippity top levels are they're wanting to make this more of a priority and get more research, get more studies and systems looked at. And so they're actually having a conversation over like the next month or so about how they're gonna revisit all the grants and all they've issued previously and figure out how they could do, what improvements might be made. So, but I guess I would put that in the stay tuned.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, back to the
Because that's not something I don't think you'd apply for right now, but
I think it's a fall application.
yeah. if you-
So,
Yeah.
under the stay tuned category, there's a couple questions. One of them is, we've been reluctant to sign the current contract pending this conversation we're having now.
Mhm.
So if we go ahead with this and get started on it, does that then take us out of the running for the grant to get paid for what we've already done?
Oh,
So, what do you mean by grant?
We're talking about, what we
The-
just,
With ACCD?
whatever you just
So
said.
the municipal planning grant is what.
Yeah, the planning grant, this is the one that you went for before. But you couldn't spend the money until you got the grant.
right.
Partly because we don't have any money to spend, but partly because some of the rules require that. And as you pointed out, you can't give us money for a project we haven't vetted through you first.
Oh, you're drawing the line of RFQ?
I'm drawing the line of, some agencies won't come back and say, oh yeah, you did a good, you've ordered this study, we'll go ahead and backdate a check. We'll pay you for something you've already done. My concern is, do we have to wait on this project?
So, we can't answer for the folks at ACCD. We typically don't retroactively fund, so we kind of know that you were coming in.
Well, and this is a conversation you and I had about
Yes.
making sure that the federal components are built into the contract
Right.
in order to make it possible for us to get funded for this, any other future projects.
Right.
We understand that after you explain it to me. The question is whether this same planning grant has the same restrictions. We don't know.
I wouldn't,
Well, I don't know about, yeah, you know, we really have to defer to those experts.
Sure, I understand, I was just wondering if
I
this.
think given your time and everything, this is this is the path.
For right now, yeah.
Okay.
And you're saying we shouldn't sign this contract until,
The folks with the municipal planning grants have come to us and we've learned how to work together so that the deliverable that you get from this study can feed into a planning grant if that's what you need to do next. Especially if there might be, test pits or something that you would need to do. They're a good place to go for that.
Things that come out of the study that
Yeah. things
her
that-
funds would fund.
Yeah. And then.
Step 2, 3,
I think we still need the bottom line answer. Do we sign the contract now,
Thank you.
or do we wait?
Oh, it's gonna get changed now to.
But that's gonna need to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and that can be moved along with,
And that's something I can work with Paul and Lynette even tomorrow.
Sure.
And we can do
all
that.
right, so we should wait until we hear, until you,
Yeah, we'll put that together, make sure we're all on the same plane and that we're not doing something in haste that will cost us big time in the future.
right,
Does that make sense to everybody?
that's,
A lot of heads are nodding. Out of fatigue or, oh my goodness, what time is it? Any other questions for these people? This is awful nice of you guys to come down.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Listen, this is super, this is good information, a good dialogue, a good conversation,
Well, it's
because
great
there's
to
so
have
many
Chrissy
pieces.
here too, because the three of you working together.
Yeah.
And
Chris will
also our Wyndham,
Oh, he's on here.
we've got
it
three
comes from the
crowd.
fund.
And there's another opportunity, this will planning grant, don't hold anybody to this, but depending on how things shake out, Londonderry has the same questions you guys do, they've got 2 villages. So like it's possible on the municipal planning grant side, this is the Agency of Commerce and Community Development thing, or maybe even possibly further down the road with your funding, to do more of a consortium grant, to where you get more bang from the buck potentially if like Jamaica and Londonderry, you're both here neighbors, are looking at more of totality, so that then if you do an RFQ for working with 3 villages, or maybe an economy of scale that you wouldn't have on just the 2. But I think it's more of an MPG thing, but
I think it is, yeah, because when it comes to.
MPG municipal planning grant. Don't fret over that, don't.
It's down the road.
I doesn't say anything about complicating, but it's just something to think about in autumn, where once you guys see where you're at, and once we see where the municipal planning grant program is at, and the conversations about funding, and also frankly to see where Londonderry is at. I know they're interested
Yeah.
in doing, and so there may be an opportunity for collaboration, there may not. It'll be whatever makes the most financial sense.
Sure.
And I heard you say at one meeting of the haze of meetings, that it would be good if the town started cooperating more and working together more.
Yeah, that's a whole nother, this is a whole nother thing, but we're actually applying for, Wyndham Regional Commission is applying for National Endowment for the Arts grant to help convene all the towns in the Route 30 corridor to talk about how do we make our shared corridor a more vibrant place.
And I had a conversation today with a woman on the bus committee who would be interested in having a meeting of the villages who were talking about the possibility of transportation up Route 30.
We've had that.
Well, we've got
Because
that,
we had that tonight.
that proposal is in place, we're just waiting for federal funding to be available. That proposal has been developed, it's just waiting, what's called CMAQ funding to be available to implement it. So that's been done, it's just waiting for the money.
So for tonight, you'll get the RFQ and the current contract. I'll get them in the mail, email to you guys tomorrow, and I'll copy you on everything I send them, and you guys can kind of coordinate that. And I'm gonna copy you as well for the planning committee, so that you guys, the planning folk, know what's going on, because this is affecting us all, and how we move forward.
Also affecting too.
Sure.
Well, all of that.
Not as well this time of year.
Oh, I just censored. I did. Thank you. Any more further questions? Thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we will be in contact.
All right.
And thank you, sir, for coming in and
Anything?
adding the window part to it. Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very welcome. Have a good one.
So, I don't see anybody from the school district, so we'll put that on hold. Anybody come to speak on the school? Nope. Okay, so we'll put that on hold for time.
What was that?
Number 6.
Thank you.
Mowing plowing for the school.
So we'll hold that. Number 7, we have, as some of you have noticed by scanning to my stage left over here, an interim interim scribe, because we no longer have the town clerk that we once had. This complicates a number of things, one of which is the treasurer's position about signing checks and things and what she can do, what she cannot. So I think what we need to do is we need to appoint Terry to be the interim town clerk pending the selection of a new one. And I would entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? You understand what we're trying to do, we're just trying to officially give, Terry's always been the assistant town clerk
Right.
and has years of experience doing all of this stuff, but we just need to make it official. So all in favor of appointing Terry to be the interim town clerk, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody say no? Okay, so Terry will be the new interim town clerk. Also complicated by being down to one person. We have a very, very thin bench. So thin, in fact, something has fallen to me. I think we also need to make a motion to empower the chair to sign the town checks and documents in the treasurer's absence. In the past, when the treasurer wasn't available, the town clerk could sign. Since she is now one of the same person, the obvious next line of defense is to empower the chair to sign the checks in the treasurer's absence. I would entertain a motion about that, and then any further discussion.
I move that the chair of the board select people receive the job of signing the checks for the town.
Say that one more time.
I lost you somewhere there.
What? Just wait.
All right, we're
Yes.
making him a signer for now.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of allowing or empowering the chair to sign the town checks and documents in the treasurer's absence, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I only have one aye. We need 3.
I'm sorry, I was daydreaming.
So we have 2 ayes,
Abstain.
an abstention, and so the chair will vote aye. We will pass that. And that will be returned when we get a new town clerk. We'll go back to the existing procedures. Next item on the docket is something to do with the VTrans capital program prioritization. You asked for the time for that.
Right, and that is also what happened tonight at the Regional Transportation meeting, so we don't have to do that later. So, right now, the Transportation Committee of Wyndham Regional is considering the projects that will be done, not for this coming year of 2018, but 2 years from now, 2020. Because that's how it works. And before I say anything about it, the Wyndham Regional Transportation Committee provides 20% of the input of the decisions that VTrans makes. So whatever we spend, whatever hours we spend, whatever trips we take, VTrans looks at our reports and says, well, we'll give that 20% of the power. Okay, having said that, today we talked about paving, and there's a project paving till Route 11, from Jamaica to Route 11, the junction of Route 11, and that project is scheduled to actually be done in August, started in August. Now, they're not making a new road.
Did you say started in August or finished in
It's
August?
going to start in
It's
August.
going to start in August.
It's started in August. It's already been approved by VTrans. There is a part of it that may be delayed because there's also the need for a culvert. And it's a box culvert, so that may hold up the paving, but otherwise it's going to be started in August. The next meeting, we're going to consider bridges, and our bridge to the state park is number 2 on the list, but I was advised that number 2 could be 2 years from now, 5 years from now. I've raised everything to high from medium as urgency, and we're going to consider that next week. But in the interim, I went down and got under the bridge and got a picture of the condition of the I-beams, and anybody can come up and see this, which are not I-beams anymore. And this is not leaves, this is rust.
And that's number 32 bridge, right?
Number 32. So I've been pressing with this, and this is only their.
May I say it, please?
Yes. I'll give it to you. One form of capitalization, and if the bridge falls in the water, it gets much quicker.
When was the last inspection on that bridge, do you know?
I wasn't able to find out, but VTrans inspects it every 2 years.
Every 2 years, I think it was the last,
I wonder how much they've inspected of it.
they inspected the whole thing.
I think they did because
They did.
they lowered the weight limit last
It was
summer.
16.
Yeah, they did lower.
Right.
it.
16 or 17.
16, I believe.
Right, so the weight
Right.
limit is 16,000 pounds, but now the Army Corps wants to downgrade it to 8,000 pounds.
Right.
Go away.
8,000, God,
8,000 pounds is 4 tons. It's not a lot of weight.
very little.
Would that limit campers getting into
I'm
the
sorry?
state park? Would that limit campers getting in the state
What
park?
it's limiting right now is they can't go in with an oil truck that's full.
Oh, wow, okay.
They're hesitant to go in with a fire engine. The state park can't have its firewood program because it exceeds the weight. And there's no control over the weight of campers that go in there, but I understand that campers are mostly air. So
2,000 pounds, usually 2,500.
apparently not that heavy, so.
Just curious if that would be an impact at the state park, that's all.
Well, it does impact the state park in terms of.
And the other things, right?
The other things.
And we do have 4 homeowners.
There are 4 homes up there.
Yeah.
And then there's a property to the right, and I don't know how it affects that property. The continuation of the trail.
Well, that's Mr. Miller's property.
Yeah, I think he wanted to log it, as I recall.
If you want to, he probably can't log
Well, they're
it.
usually dragging a few over, it's
Two
complicated.
at a time. So, anyway, so that's what the capital program is. There are other sources of funding, but they haven't been able to come up with anything that would do this immediately. It takes a long time to get something like a bridge replaced. But we are way up on the list.
Yeah.
So, the other bridge,
Excuse me, we're on the candidate list, I take it.
we're on the candidate list, yes. The other list is, you probably know what that's called.
Pre-candidate.
Pre-candidate list, right. The Depot Street Bridge, which is the one that goes from Route 30 to Water Street, was higher up on the list than it is now. So, for all practical purposes, that if it undergoes the same process, it might not be done for 10 or 15 years.
And what number bridge is that? Do you know?
I don't know the number of that bridge.
It was the Depot Street Bridge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All that concrete keeps falling off.
So, we just watched and.
Well, I'm-
Did you make the case?
I keep making the case at every meeting, and I'll certainly make it next month, because the meetings are once a month.
Okay, thank you. While you have the floor, you wanted to report on the WRC meeting. Is that what you were just talking about?
Yes, that's what I was
This
talking
is
about.
the, yes, okay,
Yes.
so we've covered both of those.
Right. Okay, number 9 is also something I brought up, which is, do you want me to go ahead with that?
Do we want to do that tonight in the interest of time moving forward, or will you do it?
Well, it's quick. Up to you.
Is there a time constraint?
Well, yeah, they're talking about it now in the legislature.
All right. Take it.
Okay, real quick. VLCT came out for this change in the open meeting law before they were against it. They are now strongly against it. And the change would have been to call a quorum. A quorum could be a serial quorum. In other words, if two of the select people or any open meeting subject committee had a conversation and then a third person walked in, even if the first person walked out, this would be considered a violation of the law. Also, there was a provision to appoint an ombudsman who could directly receive any complaints against an organization for violating the law and take them immediately to the court without going through any further steps. However, I just, in the latest newsletter and conversations I've had, they've gotten the committee that's proposing this change in the open meeting law to rewrite the entire law. And just really quickly, also that you couldn't have a substantial conversation even if you don't have a quorum. And the committee now plans to make a major revision to the proposed language of this new law. The committee would like to define meetings in a manner that allows board members to exchange information and educate others on important topics, so long as those communications aren't intended to reach agreements on matters that would require binding action by the board or otherwise violate other provisions of the law. The committee seems to also have moved away from the proposal of creating an ombudsman position. So pressure from, I know I called some people to voice my objection to this, and I think it would be good if the town sent a short letter, email, just saying that we oppose changes that would limit our, and I sent you a copy of that proposal, that would limit our ability to communicate. There's also another provision, and I don't know how it affects us, where they want to change the way towns provide information to people seeking information, which would cause the town to provide more time than a half hour. In other words, the town would have, the way they propose it, the town would have to provide any amount of time for people researching information. And the town would have to bear the expense, which is a change from where it was previously. I have it written down somewhere, but I'm kind of speaking quickly because I know that you have a time constraint. And that's all I have to say about this.
So you're asking basically for us to
Send a letter proposing, objecting to a change that would limit the ability of two people to speak, or what I put in that letter is kind of what I'd still propose.
Did you guys get copies of this letter?
I don't think so.
I was thinking I copied it to everybody. Well, I sent it out.
I think I got it.
Yeah. I'll remind you, he wrote, this is a letter proposing the letter. We, the members of the Select Board of Jamaica, Vermont, are very concerned about the implications of the proposed changes to the open meeting law now as of January 24th in the Government Operations Committee. As we understand these proposed changes, we must oppose them. This is what he had written. My comment to him was, I think that if we use the word implications, we should spell some of them out. And I think one of the ones I mentioned to you was the problem with getting any business done. I was thinking that not allowing two members to discuss an issue outside of a board meeting pretty much cripples the town's ability to get any of the routine business of running the town done. At any rate, that's not an issue anymore, because it sounds like they're moving ahead without it.
Well, they're still in committee. They still haven't come out with an actual proposal for this change in the law. So it would be good if we continue to oppose those things.
All right, the thoughts?
I would add what you read about two people. I think to be specific is much better than to leave it nebulous.
Just the implications, add that as an example.
Yeah.
Alexa, your thoughts? All right, so what I will do is I'll take what you wrote stick what I wrote in, and circulate it for everybody to look it over.
Okay.
And then if we're all aligned, then we can send it off.
Okay.
Does that sound like a plan? Okay. Do we want to put as a signature block just the chair or all of us?
You'd have to put them on.
All of us? I think so too. Yep.
I think we would have a little bit more punch if there were 5
Right.
Yep.
names listed.
Yep. Well, so then I'll do is I'll put together, circulate it, print it, and have it sitting in the red box for everybody to come in and sign it. Okay. Number 11.
10.
Did we skip 10?
Yep.
But I asked you if the WRC meeting, what you were just talking about.
No, that's the full commission. I was talking about the transportation committee meeting. But all,
I thought you mentioned that the WRC did. Never mind, go
this
ahead.
is also WRC. There was a full commission meeting 2 weeks ago, or last week. And they had a presentation about Act 64, the Clean Water Act, where we're required to, over the next X years, I think it's required to be completed by 2037, to have runoff controlled from roads contaminating streams. It was an interesting meeting, and I think the essence of it was in this handout that they passed out, so I printed them up, and we can look at it. Basically, we have to start, I think you know that.
Yeah, Keith and I went to a meeting.
Yeah.
Now we've got a lot of information.
Yeah, so I have this brochure, everybody can have one.
Okay, thank you. The good news, of course, is that Keith has been aware of this, and he's been
He has been.
part of our fourth employee was to address some of these issues and getting something good. Okay. Next item is number 11. Another one you wanted us to bring up.
Yes, we've had conversations between ourselves, and I think that it should come out in the select board. I propose taking courses, and I've met resistance from that. And I think that declining to fund select boards continuing education sends a message that it's not valued and may discourage citizens from being involved in town government. I go to these meetings whether it's approved or not. Anybody who wants to go to these meetings, go to these meetings. We've had a policy of reimbursing for meetings. I think the total cost that I've incurred this town is probably $400 or less for the year. And I think it's fair to be reimbursed for this. And so that's what I'm proposing. I intend to go to Montpelier Wednesday to
Meet and greet.
meet the town government. There are some others that I'm planning on going to. I think that we need the information, and I think it's an important aspect of our responsibilities to know what the rules are and what opportunities are.
So I'd like to comment real quickly that I don't think any of us are against the education of our members. What we're saying is that there is a procurement procedure by which no single select board member can unilaterally tell the treasurer to write a check. So any of those conversations around meetings need to happen in front of the select board, so that we, as a select board, can instruct the treasurer to write the check. So we're not turning down the education, we're turning down the process by which one member unilaterally instructs the treasurer to write a check. So, and that's the part of the education we all need as much as we can afford. And I emphasize afford because we have a budget we have to do.
Well, I think that we should add enough to the budget to be reasonable, to make a reasonable amount. I don't think that we should add $1,000 to the budget, but I think there should be a reasonable amount, and I think that it should be easier. I mean, if you want me to apply for every course through every select board meeting, I'll do that.
Well, one of the things that we should consider though is you've been applying for traveling expenses for mileage.
But about 11 months ago, I was told that that was a provision that was available.
Well, along with that, in your early years, months here, we also told you that you're getting $1,000 a year stipend for select board expenditures,
Which I give away.
which sounds really magnanimous and lovely that you give it away, but then to give your expense account away and then come back to the treasurer.
But that isn't the expense account. That's not the way the $1,000 was set up. It's not an expense account.
I'm sorry, what did you think it was?
A stipend that, for being on the select board.
Stipend to cover our expenses for being on the select board.
That's not the way it was presented to me.
Well, I'm representing it then, because I don't remember exactly who presented it or what, but I think you understand the fact, we all get expenses that come up all the time.
Yes, so do I.
Yeah, and so that was a stipend. When we expanded it up to $1,000, that was to cover our expenses. So you cannot give that $1,000 away and call it charity and then come back and
So
get
in
it.
other words, that we all have to spend all of that stipend.
If you get over that amount, come back.
We should all,
If you spend more than 1,000, we can talk about it. But it's, trips to Brattleboro are in the normal course of our daily activity. I go to Brattleboro, I go to Putney, I go to Winchester, I go all the time. And I never charge mileage because I consider that part of the expense of my
Can I
position.
say something?
Sure.
We never had mileage for the select board. Anytime.
okay.
So, no, I just want, let me finish, please. But in our new budget, when we did it, we did put in mileage because we know that people going on your meetings, instead of going to Brattleboro to your meetings or somebody else go to a meeting, the mileage is appropriate to give, and I agree with that. So in the past, we really never had a lot of money for mileage, and I think that's where the issues kind of came up. We're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, and we have our money, our budgets are set. I know sometimes you make a comment and say, oh, there's money here or there, and we try very hard, and I'm sure you do too, to keep our budget in place so that the money that we put for trainings and mileage, paper, whatever, town office, planning commission has a budget that they use for their stuff. We try to keep things in order and not go over the budget so that we don't have to borrow money. We've always been very proud of not having to take a loan in anticipation of taxes. I don't know how many years it's been since we've done that. Not saying your mileage is going to make us do that. So we'd like to continue, I'm sure, as a taxpayer, I'd like to continue to see that we don't have to borrow money in anticipation of taxes and stuff like that. But as for going to school and taking courses, I'm all in favor of it. And I think with our new budget, we've budgeted for that, and I think that will help. It'll help people.
And the gatekeeper for this process is the select board.
Right.
The select board, not an individual. So you cannot go to a meeting, as valuable as it may be, and then instruct the treasurer to write you a check.
But she has to.
Well, there is some honor amongst us.
There would be, except that I'm seeing that the treasurer comes to me and says, the select board didn't tell me to write this check. The board is the gatekeeper, not individual members of the board. So we have no problem with education. We have a problem with the process of skipping the process. So if you wish to give your $1,000 to the library, that's fine with me, but don't then come back and ask the town to reimburse you for the very funds that you just gave away. Not exactly terrible, in my estimation. Having said that, I think Lex's point is very well taken. We do try to keep as close a touch as we can on the budget. If there's a course that you'd like to go to, present it to us. Select board will then give her instructions, and that's how we'll proceed, which is the way we've been proceeding for years.
Okay, I'm going to the course in Montpelier on Thursday actually.
Tuesday.
Yes.
Make the pitch. What's the course? What's it involved? What's the advantage to the town?
I'll tell you what. I can afford to pay for this. I don't need this money.
Okay.
I'm making this provision as a principle of the select board to encourage select board members. I think every course that I've gone to, and I've gone to a dozen courses, most of which cost nothing. And when I proposed having an open meeting law here for $400 and the select board voted it down, I found somebody very responsible and reputable to do it for nothing. I've gone out of my way to take courses that don't cost a lot of money, and most of them don't cost any money. So, I mean, if I have to appeal to you and tell you why I can justify this course, then I'll just pay for it.
No, I don't think that's what it is. I think it's just say, okay, I'd like to take a course on Thursday.
taking the course.
This is the name of the course, so that, and I'll come back to the select board and tell you what we learned, or what I learned.
But I did come back and tell
I
you
know,
what I
but I
learned.
think that's just the process.
We
I
can wait.
agree that it really needs to be for the benefit of the town, not just
Well, this is-
because
I
it
don't
is.
pick courses that.
Just a minute, I'm speaking. I really don't think that it's nice to take courses, but I think our role by having these courses offered, we always have to ask the question, is this something that will benefit the town or benefit our understanding of what is for the town? So, to do that, I go to Wyndham Solid Waste every month. I never put in a bill for that. I just assume.
That's your choice. You can afford to do that. There are
No.
people who can't.
I'm a retired psychologist. I'm not making big bucks anymore. So the fact is that
I'm not.
I just see it as part of my giving of being a member of the select board.
And you don't think that me going to take a course where I have to pay $150 for a hotel and take 24 hours or
I think-
48 hours of my time isn't given?
I think if it will benefit for the town, and that's where the justification needs to come for
Well,
us
then-
to hear what the course is like. I think it's also an important thing, if you do have something like that, that you bring us the paper that it's written on. This course is to da-da-da-da-da-da-da, all of the
So for instance,
information.
I went to the town fair in Killington. Now, how can I define exactly how that's going to pertain to the course? I went to a lot of seminars in that. It was a full day. How can I define what it's going to be in town? I make a lot of contacts with a lot of people. I advocate for the town at those places, and I've had people from those places contact me. And that's not, and you don't.
It needs to be in writing. This
So
course
every course that
will,
I apply to needs to be.
I would write it out, right?
I
You
give
can
a
sit
report
down.
for every single course that I take.
Yeah.
I have, and I continue to, and I will whether or not.
I
you
think
pay
that
for
it needs to be written out what this course will do to help this select board and this town. And then we vote on whether or not that's a possibility for the town to pay. We are the keepers of the town money, and we've got to watch what we spend our money. As a matter of fact, I'm concerned about our budget coming up this year, particularly with the increase in Leland and Gray and whatever else. So we really need to be very thrifty in our thinking.
Any professional organization I've ever been associated with, and I suspect all of you feel the same, when there's an expenditure, there is the cost and the benefit presented to the people who decide. If you're gonna come in and Lord knows, all the education we can get is good if we can afford it. But to come in and say, I'm gonna go, blank check, write me a blank check, that's not very professional. We need to know what it's gonna be and what it's gonna cost. And that's not, I don't think that's out of line.
I mean,
Okay, and vote against it.
So are you gonna take the course on Thursday, Joel?
Yes.
Are you gonna tell us what it is?
And
How much it costs?
I don't remember the name of it. It's a VLCT course. We're members of that PASIF. You sent the letter. I responded to, the ones I take that cost money, I take because you send out letters.
I just send everything we get,
Send
people to
everything
choose
we
from.
get.
That's not an instruction to go to, it's just an offer. What's the cost?
$60.
Okay, is there a transportation cost?
I'm going to Montpelier.
Are you gonna spend the night?
Yes,
So then there's a cost for that?
I'm paying for that.
Those are the kinds of things we'd like to know.
Well, you told me that you only cover mileage, you don't cover room and board.
We don't cover
That's
anything
fine.
if you don't
And
come
that's
to us
fine.
and ask for it.
And that's fine. I'm paying because I want to go and learn it. And I know that the provision of you paying for a hotel doesn't exist, and that's fine with me.
The provision does exist, it's warranted.
I'm not asking for it.
Okay, but you're not asking for anything. You're just coming in and telling us what you're going to do.
We don't have money for hotels.
I know that, but that's not the point.
I'm
The
not
point
going
is-
to ask for hotels.
Back to the process. The process is present the,
You
what
know,
you're going to get out of it.
I'm just going to take the costs, and you
You're
decide what
welcome.
you want to do.
Well, that's your choice.
Thank you, I just said that.
All right. So the line item of clarifying procedures regarding select board members getting reimbursed for coverages and travel expenses, can we say that it has been clarified? Good. Any further questions or information on that one? Hearing none, let's move to number 12. In the last few weeks, last month or so, we've had a number of problems on our roads. We are going to be getting out flyers. What happens is when you plow across a state road in Vermont, if you leave residue on the pavement in the right of way, it's against the law. Fines range from $46 to $1,190. We will be passing that information out. Not only is it illegal, it's highly dangerous for the traffic, especially at night in the dark. So we're gonna put, I've talked to the sheriff's department, they have no problem writing tickets, they just need to know where to go. So the road crew's been given flyers to pass out wherever they find this. We are going to start enforcing it now. We're not waiting for second. This is something that is common knowledge if you've lived in Vermont and you have a Vermont driver's license. Just a heads up on that one. So if you're plowing or you have somebody plowing your property, make sure there are no rows, ridges, any incrementation on the pavement. It's very difficult for our guys to be trying to pave the roads, and every once in a while, the entire wing or the whole truck slides sideways because they hit somebody's berm. Okay, that's all I have on that one. The other item we have, number 13, we have some excess weight permits. Sadly, our road commissioner's under the weather.
Maybe they'll stop in tomorrow.
We can talk to them about that, they're pretty routine. We also have a review, a liquor license renewal. This isn't quite as routine. Not that there's anything wrong with it, it's just that we don't see that many of them. And this is the liquor license for, this is for the Muleman crew. What is your official name?
Personal name or
No,
the
not your
company?
personal name, you I got, it's your business.
The business name is Blue Dot Beverages.
Why can't I find that on here? Oh, there it is, right there. For Blue Dot Beverages, yes. And it's a routine item, and you're pretty much following suit with what you've done in the past.
Right. I was just questioning why is mine any more routine than anybody else's that's not in the pot?
No, because these are weight limit things.
Oh, but I mean,
You're the only one, you're the only liquor request.
so it just strikes me as odd that there's 4 other businesses in
They
town
come
that
in
need that.
different
They come at
times.
different times.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh, no, I wasn't kidding, I was not casting any aspersions. I was
No, I was
pointing
just
out.
curious. I wasn't worried.
No,
No,
he's
no,
not
no.
gonna close up that
Okay.
beer shop.
No, no, no. Are you
That
kidding?
wasn't the reason I was here anyway, so I was just kind of.
Okay, but anyway, but
Isn't it April 1st? that they have to-
April 1st, yes.
yeah, but they come at different times.
Right.
And I didn't mean to,
No, okay.
so,
He doesn't drink beer.
so we just need to vote to approve or disapprove. I have in my file absolutely nothing negative reported to me about the Blue Dot Beverage LLC.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion to accept,
Second.
and we have a second. Any further discussion?
Second it.
Joel?
Joel.
All in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye, aye. And
I'm sorry.
there we go. All, any opposed? Yes, sir. We will sign this tonight. And you will be good. Okay.
I wasn't worried.
That's, no. We weren't worried about you. The other, next item I've got is time for public concerns. Do you have any public that are concerned?
I do have my,
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, there's 2. Oh, Lord, thank you for reminding me. I'm looking at the clock, thinking, really quick, we have to go into executive session, that'll be the last thing we do.
okay, this is not executive session.
Okay.
Okay, shall I go?
Yep, yes, I am. Looking at the clock.
All right.
Okay.
Problem has developed with the library concerning the water system for the new toilet in the lower floor. What has happened is that the church has been giving water to the toilet that is in the library. But in the wintertime, it freezes, the pipe freezes, because there's a section of the pipe as it comes from the library building into the church. It needs to have a wire, a hot, or what do they call that?
Electric tape.
Yeah, electric tape.
Heat tape.
What has happened, though, is that in order for the church to have the water and the heat tape for it, what is running in, they are now running a whole hose that starts in the back of the church, and it runs all the way over into an area where water is coming, where it goes from the pump. And the electricity is being put in there by the church. So what we're asking for the people at the church and is for the library to put in a socket, not a socket, outlet, thank you. An outlet closer to where the water is going from the church over into the building. The requirement is, from the state law, is that this heat tape can only come from where the water source is and not the other way around. So what the church is asking is that the library put in the outlet, and the church will give them the water as part of their, and the electricity that goes with that. But would the library, and since we are in charge of the building of the library, it's up to us to decide whether or not that outlet can be installed in a much better place. Joel knows a little bit about this because he has that same problem at your house going into. Oh, I thought you did.
No, I just saw the problem that you had.
Okay.
So the question I have is this ought to be going to the library board? Are they not in the loop on this since it's their?
No,
You're saying that the tape should be plugged into the library, not into the church?
no, we will, it has to be plugged in where the water source is coming from,
Which is the
which
church.
is the church.
So you want the library board to pay to have an outlet installed
Yes.
next to the pipe,
Yes,
so that it doesn't have to be an extension cord running across the kitchen?
exactly, and that's exactly what is happening, is that this extension cord is going all the way through the building, underneath the countertops, in front of the cook stove, and it runs at least 20 feet.
You want the library then to fund
For the socket.
installation of
Yeah.
a socket?
Right. To pay
It's
for the
probably
tape.
part of the project when they put in that new toilet, so they could have a running
Yeah.
toilet there.
And right now, for the socket, the church is willing to give them all the water they want and also even pay for the electricity. But they would like the socket so that they can get rid of this real long extension cord that is really in a dangerous
So isn't
place.
this in the library budget?
I have no idea.
Well, shouldn't it be in the library's budget, or should it be in the town's budget?
Well, we own the building, so it's our responsibility.
We, the select,
Yes.
we own the library.
The town
Yes.
owns it.
The building, you own, it's under our jurisdiction.
So you're proposing that the town or the library, who should do this, the library or the
The
select?
library should put in the outlet, and the
Well,
water will
Who
be
should
free.
fund this?
The town.
The town or the library?
We have a the library has a budget.
The library has a
They
budget.
have a budget, I don't know what it is at this
So
point.
whose budget does this go?
It would come out of the library budget?
Right, that's what I was.
Do they do things for the building?
Well, they put in that, they got a grant for the whole plumbing. I mean, there's a lot of different funding sources that went into the plumbing. So
Right,
they-
we do have for repairs and stuff like that, I believe. for the
Yeah.
Yeah,
library.
but
So
that's
that could
why I
be-
think
that
it
could be
probably
part of
comes
it.
under the town's jurisdiction.
Right, and that could come out of the maintenance repairs.
Right.
Of the town.
The library,
Of
of the
the library.
library's budget through the town.
Yeah, I understand that, but the library is the one that has to fund this through the,
Right,
Right.
right, we come out of like, when we buy something for the town office.
right.
Then you,
But it's,
whatever, it comes out of the town office, it doesn't come out of the planning commission.
sure, but
Whatever.
back to the conversation we were having a few minutes ago. There is a board of the library
Right.
that manages and controls and runs their
And they
budget.
will, they will set all that up, let them set all that up.
Yeah, that's what I said, let the budget, let the library commission, whatever they're called, figure out if it's in their budget.
It's the trustees,
Trustees, whatever they're called.
and they will let us know how much it costs.
And then if for whatever reason, that isn't part of the, their planning for the project they have, then they can come to us. But they're sort of in place to manage the funds of the library. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that because we own the building and it is a water pipe that
Sure.
is ours, not the library
Yeah.
people, that's why it should be under our jurisdiction to be paying for
Right,
the
it'll come out,
outlet.
it'll come out of the library's expenses,
Okay,
repairs and maintenance.
So we've given them X number of bucks to
But
do that with.
the trustees will make arrangements to have that fixed.
Yeah.
who will do make arrangements?
The
The
trustees.
trustees of the library, not
Okay,
us.
so
We
then-
don't have to, we don't have,
Do I need to go to the library and tell them to do this?
Well, I have a question. I'm not sure when you say I or we, which group you're representing? The church or the?
Select board.
Select board, okay. The church put the request to you?
Yes,
Okay, so the church gave to the select board?
yes, to me,
Well, you're
Do you-
on the church committee as well.
yes, I am.
So you're basically
I'm kind of got a foot in each camp.
two banana peels.
Okay.
Okay, so then the correct response is, let's coordinate with the library trustees in that capacity. They may have that already built into the funding, we don't know, but they should be involved in
you
that.
could go to one of the readings, it's,
The next
on the
couple of
bulletin
days.
board is the next meeting.
Yeah.
It's
The next
It's
couple
just
of
that
days. isn't it?
we give them extra flex, as you pointed out before.
Right.
Then they're the ones who should manage that money. If there's a problem with that, then they can back up to you.
Okay, I just assumed that because the building is ours as a select board.
Clearly, it's something
that we're
that's
the
seriously
ones to
bad.
make that decision.
Something goes seriously bad, we're gonna be there to help them.
Right, but if you
But
could
they're
go
supposed to
there-
be the day-to-day managers.
If you could go to their board meeting,
Okay,
it's Thursday, is it, what time, 6 o'clock?
5:30.
5:30?
when is it?
It's
This
5:30 this Thursday or next Thursday, it's every Thursday, I believe.
It's actually every third Thursday, and it's at 5:30.
It's every third
But
Thursday?
this is the third
Is this the
Thursday.
library board now?
Yes.
It's in the library itself, in the big room that they have.
So it's 5:30
Thursday.
This coming Thursday.
this coming Thursday? Okay.
And then you can, they can explain to you probably what's happening too, and, you know,
Well, they've got to do it because I think what's going to happen is that the church is willing to pay, but it's very dangerous to have that
Oh, absolutely
long
agree.
extension cord.
yeah.
Absolutely agree with you. I just want to make sure that we're following our procedures. Every time we deviate from them, we're
Right.
into trouble.
And that's what usually happens. Usually if there's a leak in the roof, they'll tell us, okay, there's a leak in the roof. We will contact John Doe and he, or so-and-so, and they'll give us the cost. So they do all the legwork and bring the bills to us.
Okay. I shall do that.
Thank you. All right, so,
One more addition that I made that you accepted,
I thought you said, didn't you just cover that?
under the Southern Vermont Housing Summit.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, all right, sorry about that. I had you down for a couple of things there.
Won't take long.
Okay.
What is it called,
Okay.
Southern Vermont Housing?
This is sponsored by, among others, BDCC. There were a lot of organizations that represented. This took place on February 9th at Bennington College. and it's the fourth in the Economic Development Series that PDCC is running. Basically, the concerns were, that were most important in this were affordable housing. And every area has this problem. The areas like Bennington and Brattleboro get a lot of funding because they're very proactive. I spoke with Peter Paggi, who was Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, and he has built a lot of places in Brattleboro. And I think he's working on a project in Putney, and he's actively looking for projects. And I know that our town doesn't have a lot of affordable housing, and so it might be something that we can look at. The biggest resource about this is something I reported on before, which was a bond issue from the state of $35 million to provide funding for projects. And a lot of people are applying, and we have until 2020 to if we want to come up with a project. The tools and resources of the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, Regional Planning Commissions, Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, Shires Housing, well, that's, I think, in Bennington. A very strong participant in this is the USDA Rural Development, and they have money to provide as well. There are tax credits, and I don't want to say the last line because it has the word zoning in it, so I won't. But it was just a very informative meeting. Chris Campany was there, people from BDC were there, BDCC were there. I met a lot of interesting people that are resources that we can use, and I think it's something we should consider.
Is this money loan money or is it grant money?
It's a combination of that. You understand that better than I do, don't you?
It's mostly helping municipalities develop public-private partnerships or public nonprofit
Okay, but it's not
partnerships.
grant money, so it wouldn't be free money that's there for people.
Some of it definitely is free money, but because of the economics of it, it usually works in municipalities with a larger population density. But I attended it too, just because as a new member of the Planning Commission, I wanted to know more about this. There is actually a possibility that with the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, that there might be potential properties even in Jamaica that could be available and eligible for this grant money. So.
Okay, now affordable housing, when you're talking about that, is that like to take a single family home and to fix it up and
It could,
the town
Yes,
would own
yes,
it or they would
yes.
buy it?
Well,
How
That's
would that
exact-
work?
that's exactly what
Only
it
two
does.
groups can actually apply for this. One is a town select board,
Mhm.
and the other one is a 501c3.
Mhm.
So if somebody wanted to sponsor affordable housing, well, there was a project in West Townsend, that whole cafe thing was sponsored by a nonprofit to increase the potential of the town. If some group of people, investors, wanted to buy a building, and there are buildings available here that might be candidates for something like this, they would form a nonprofit and apply for this. This would not be the town buying it. The town could have its own project if it chose, but an individual could not, on his own or her own, buy a piece of property and apply for this. It
Would
has
the
to be
town
at
be
least,
approved by the town?
the town would have to own it,
Okay.
at least initially, or a nonprofit group, 501c3.
which is what the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust.
Right,
is.
and I spoke to this Peter Paggi, who is, I don't know what his office is at the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, and he thought that if there were properties in Jamaica, he would look into doing that.
Okay, say like the Jamaica House is for sale, it's a big hotel. A lot of
Yeah.
folks don't want to run a hotel anymore, it's a lot of work.
Right.
And So if some nonprofit came in and,
Well, I
Purchase
understand
it.
somebody looked at that building for a senior center, senior living center, not a nursing home, but something like it, what
and
they
nursing
have
home
in
would be
Townsend.
hard to put in, yeah.
Don't make fun of me, yeah.
No, I mean, it's a difficult thing, it's not
Yes.
easy, it's.
No, but this would just be affordable housing for seniors who wanted to stay in Vermont, stay in a small town.
Like
And-
55 and older.
I think that
Greg doesn't count.
I think that 55 or older has to be bumped up a little, we're doing better.
Years ago, there was some interest in one of the houses on Route 30 going down towards East Jamaica for doing that with affordable housing, to put that into several apartment and then have low rent.
Well, there's several buildings that, I know that the one house on the intersection of South Hill Road and Pikes Falls Road, those people are interested in selling and they would favorably agree to that. I don't know what the outcome is on the next house over, and I know that the third house down to the village will be on the market at some point. And I don't want to go on.
No, I'm not,
I don't wanna
shut my
get
mouth,
everybody.
no.
I don't know what's happening with the coffee shop yet, but that has the potential of 3 apartments in it in addition to the businesses.
That's true.
So there are buildings like that could become part of this. And again, we're not talking about a housing project. We're not talking about low-income housing. We're talking about affordable housing.
Affordable housing rather than, I mean, I don't want to
Well,
sound.
low-income housing is important too.
It is important.
But this is all inclusive of affordable housing. So, I know as far as low-income housing, the Section 8 only has enough funding for 25% of its applicants, even though they're all eligible. The whole 100% is eligible.
Right.
There's only enough funding for 25%. So, part of economic development is getting people who have lesser means to stay in the town. Because our population over 65 is increasing very
Right. And
dramatically.
I don't mind low income or whatever, affordable
Right.
housing. But I'd like to see that the people that come in to do this will make our town, want to be here and
Exactly.
start helping the
Exactly.
town rather than just coming in like we see now. They come in, they plunk themselves down and.
Well, we can't govern. how
We can't,
people
no, I know we
behave.
can't do that, but I'd like to, just in order to make it more vibrant, we need people that are interested in the town.
Yes.
And wants to do something.
Well, I think people would want to stay in town if they could afford to stay in town. And this program, this economic development program, its goal is also to help people own homes. So it's not just people who have to be in houses, it's people to be able to, because buying a house in Vermont now is difficult. I mean, if you buy a house in town, chances are you're going to have to spend a lot more than the purchase price. So there's a lot of different aspects to affordable housing.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's
Okay,
it.
thank you. All right, just before we go into executive session, one real quick piece of business. There are 3, I'm sorry.
Were you going to call for public concerns?
He did.
I had my hand raised, but then Judy talked about the libraries.
I forgot me.
I'm sorry.
Okay, now.
Sorry.
Yeah, this is very quick. I'm actually here to represent the official Jamaica Town Democratic Committee, and we have organized a meet and greet night on March 1st at the Village School at 7 o'clock, and I am here to enthusiastically welcome each and every one of you to come to meet. It's very informal. There will be refreshments, cookies, desserts, coffee, cider. And give you an opportunity to meet with voters and to answer questions maybe from people who are potential candidates for town offices, either for this election or even in the future, just by way of exchanging information and helping to let everybody know exactly what goes on. What do you do as a select board person? And also it's going to be open not just for, obviously, select board people, but for listers, for library board candidates, constables, town agents, all the other candidates. Right. So anyway, I've got this flyer that I'll
make sure he gets it.
Thank you.
and I hope to see you all there. I think it will be a really, I think it'll be a really informative, very low-key, very informal session, and get a chance to talk to all your neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All the other citizens are blessed, I guess the concerns are resolved. Really quickly, before we go to the executive session, part of the meeting about the excess weight permits, we can instruct Amy to do it, and to do it, but we should do that. So the companies we have, the first one's RK Miles, it's a fleet, we have received his receipt, and we have the list of his trucks and the insurance. So I would entertain a motion to approve the excess weight permit for RK Miles.
Move.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of RK Miles, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it will pass, and of course, we'll have attached to it the usual restrictions. The second one we have is from Valley Crane Services. Again, he's submitted his fee, and here's the usual restrictions are on there. This is a fleet permit.
Shouldn't we have done them all together?
Huh? We could have, I just.
That's all right,
going through
that's
the
okay,
list.
go ahead.
All right, we'll do the next two together. The other one is for Renault Brothers, Inc., which is also the fleet. We also have his receipt. And there's the usual provisions attached to it. So all in favor,
You built the bridge.
these guys have done, the Renault Brothers have done a lot for this town in the last 6 years. Anyway, all in favor of overweight permits with usual restrictions for the Renault Brothers and for Valley Crane Services, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any further discussion? I think I did that backwards.
Did we do a motion?
I don't remember.
I'm motioning.
There we go.
Second.
And he seconds it.
Okay, who was the first one?
The first one was our
RK Miles.
Valley Crane Services. Oh, the first one was RK
Okay,
Miles.
Miles, that's right.
Yeah, so we will instruct, all in favor say aye, did we do that already?
Aye.
Good, all opposed,
Aye,
none,
aye, aye.
passed. We'll instruct the road commissioner.
This is the comic relief for the video.
This is the part where we get
For those
famous.
that wait over there.
What?
The second
The
one?
third one is Renault Brothers.
No, who was the second one?
Second one was,
This is a Monty Python show.
we tried to provide a little bit of everything here. Valley Crane Services, who also, by the way, have done a lot of work in Jamaica over the past 5 or 6 years. Now, we need to go into an executive session for a personnel matter. I would entertain a motion.
I move to find that premature general public knowledge of a personnel issue would clearly place a substantial disadvantage because the select board, if it, of Jamaica, if it discusses this issue, personnel issue, in public. I move that we enter into executive session to discuss a personnel situation under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1A of the Vermont statutes.
Just because we have to be this sticky. I would entertain, do I have a second on the first part of the motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Can I now have a motion on the second part of the motion?
I move.
And second.
Second.
Any opposed, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Good. We're going to enter an executive session at,
Are you expecting a decision?
we do not, what we do in here will not be reflective. So you can,
So you can go home.
nothing personal.
So
You're
fade
welcome to
out.
stay.
Fade out.
Fade. We're in executive session.